All right, welcome to March 18th in this edition of Charlie McGrath's Wide Awake News. This is Karen Quinn Tostado. I am hosting for my buddy Dinah Everett Snyder, who has issues she needs to take care of. We wish her the best, and hopefully she'll be back in her regular time slot next Tuesday. Now, what I would like to do is ask you, if possible, if you would really pay attention to this broadcast. I know it's easy to be in the chat room, and I appreciate everyone in the chat room. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate also all of you listeners, but I'd like to encourage you to really stop for a second and to center yourself and to get comfortable and to close all your other windows and maybe even get off the chat in order to really focus and listen to this information, because it is imperative, and I repeat, it is imperative that we pay attention to what is going on all around us in terms of our ecosystems and our air and our water and our land and the massive animal die-offs and the continuing onslaught of geoengineering. Many of us still do not want to look up and face the truth. However, this affects each and every one of us, and until we give it the attention it needs, it will continue. Now, I can go on, but what I'd like to do is bring on Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org and give him the floor, because he's got tremendous information. If you have questions, we'll take them in the ending segment of the program. So, Dane, thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Welcome to Wide Awake News.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks for your courage and helping us get the word out on this issue, helping us sound the alarm.
Well, it is alarming, and as much as I want to step back, and I know that you also understand, because you've been in the trenches now for at least 10 years, you tend to get overwhelmed with everything that you know. And I personally think that out of all of the issues, and I have a difficult time choosing which issue is most important. I think definitely ending the war is very much on the top of my list, but I would have to say geoengineering is first, because it affects each and every one of us. And even if we had peacetime, we would still be under the onslaught of these experiments. So I'm going to hand the floor to you and take it away. I'll come back with questions later.
And to follow up on your statement, I mean, certainly this is a job that none of us wanted. It's the last job I ever wanted or imagined I would have to face. And once you know enough about it, you simply can't not try to deal with this issue. And as far as it being the most important on the list, I would make this argument to back up what you said. Yes, World War III, certainly our completely corrupt, insane leaders are pushing us in that direction. We have Fukushima as well. But not only is the ongoing assault, biological and chemical, in the sky killing everything on the planet, for every day that passes, it's diminishing our ability to think clearly. So I would argue this: how can we face any challenge, whether it's trying to avoid World War III or to deal with Fukushima and other nuclear issues that will come up, if we can't think clearly? And all of us are losing our cognitive ability from the constant exposure to these aerosols. So it's tearing the planet's life support systems apart, virtually poisoning everything that lives, from the clouds to the ground. And the gravity of this issue is absolutely immense. And it's astounding to date, Karen, the people who have denied this issue, avoided this issue, environmental groups, for example, who have simply said, well, it's not on our agenda. In fact, that's Greenpeace's official statement. And I was on a national radio show with their top scientist about 6 weeks ago. I've mentioned this a lot because it's important. I think if anybody listened to that show, it's on Go Green Radio with Jill Buck. Anybody who listened to that show would probably conclude that this scientist knows damn good and well that geoengineering is going on, but he simply won't speak out. And I hope some honor is found soon in the science community, because the people that are denying this issue is astounding. And whether they're being threatened, at this point it doesn't matter, because we're all going down. The ship is going down by the day, and if these people don't speak out, they won't have a chance. And even people like David Suzuki, who I've held in high regard in the past, went on the record staunchly denying climate engineering and ridiculing anybody who said it was going on. And it's astounding that people like this can take such a position. And I don't know whether they're being threatened behind the scenes or what, but bottom line is, for people who are listening, geoengineering is pounding the nails into our collective coffins day in, day out. I encourage people to look at the data that we post constantly at geoengineeringwatch.org and to determine why that conclusion is so rational. Because, again, it's from the ozone layer, which is being ripped apart by these programs. We're seeing UV on the ground that's from 1,200% to 2,000% higher than we're being told. It's burning the bark off of trees, killing plants before they can even sprout, killing plankton in the oceans, weather patterns disrupted. The rain that's falling is so toxic it's literally killing trees in the boreal forests, making every single human on the planet sick. I mean, there's nothing negative that you can't tie in one way or another to these programs. So, Karen, your assessments were 100% correct, that this is an all-out assault against life on Earth, and we have the data to back it up. And anybody who denies this going on, by the way, as well, it's you can only call it denial because we have film footage of it happening at altitude. We have too many lab tests to even begin to go into this, proving this stuff is raining down on us. So there's no plausible denial at this point. It's an all-out assault against every single one of us. We're in a fight for life. It's that simple.
I agree with you there, and it's one of the reasons, Dane, why I did come back, because as beautiful as this area is, we are heavily chemtrailed, and I'm sure that you understand and sympathize the anger that I feel at this happening without my knowledge or consent as I watch the trees in the forests, the Umpqua forest, get brittle and break and die. And I know that we're having fire season coming up, and we've got a new fire department going in, and yet they still refuse to look up and understand that these are fire accelerants that are being dropping, that the weather has been manipulated in their own words. And I'd like you to take this on, because I've been telling people for years, the United States wants to own the weather by 2025. So as far as the full spectrum dominance and the weather as a force multiplier, I know that you can flesh that out a little further, please. So would you do that?
Yeah, your points are all valid. And when they say they want to own the weather by 2025, that means they've already owned it for probably 3 decades. You know, we know these programs go back to at least the late 40s. We believe it's been used as a weapon all the way along. In fact, if we look at parts of Africa that have been droughted out by these programs, we have enough data to really say that conclusively now. So they drought out countries, bring them to their knees, force them to comply with whatever the U.S. requests. This is one of the reasons why we have boots on the ground in 156 countries around the globe. And right now the stakes are getting even higher because the climate is unraveling with such speed that I don't think they can hide the gravity of what we face or these programs much longer. So you see desperation from the power structure when you have this sort of hypocrisy from John Kerry and McCain and talking about no country has a right to violate the sovereignness of another country while we occupy 156 countries. I mean, the hypocrisy it's mind-numbing, literally. So as the curtain gets pulled back, and the climate engineering, I would argue, is the single most critical cause, in that it unites the population once they know they've been sprayed like test animals, and it exposes the level of tyranny with the power structure, and you have something that once it's exposed enough, I think will change the dynamics of what we face. We face unimaginable challenges no matter what, but this issue, again, is, for so many reasons, this should be the priority. This is the hole in the bottom of the ship. Everything else we do is comparable to maintaining or polishing the deck rails while the ship goes down. And so people absolutely should focus on this issue. And on the denial part, again, that is really astounding how well people have been trained and conditioned to not accept what they can see with their own eyes. It's perplexing beyond belief, but those people will not be able to stay in denial much longer. This issue is coming to the surface. We're hearing from people now that have been silent to date that are now starting to connect, ally, and work together to bring this to light. And if we could just bring it to light, reach critical mass, I believe the dominoes would fall on not just this issue, but on the power structure, because it takes a whole lot of people compartmentalized and work, just doing their, quote, job to make these programs go. And when those people know and understand, and their families understand, that they're killing themselves with the rest of us, I think that enough of them will refuse to participate that we'll have a different scenario. Our challenges aren't going to be gone, and those that think the climate is not damaged are wrong. Quite simply, they're wrong. The climate is broken beyond any return to what we have known in any time frame that matters. But that doesn't mean the planet can't still sustain life if we release it from this toxic straitjacket that it has been bound with. And in time, it's imperative that we release the planet and allow it to respond, allow the boreal forest to start to absorb carbon instead of dispelling carbon, which is what they're doing now because they're dying. From every aspect, we must stop these programs, or the Earth's life support systems will simply not function much longer. They're breaking down by the day right now.
You know, Dane, I've got a question in the chat room that I think that you can help expound on as well, because there are still people out there, I know people personally, who say that, no, there's no way, we're just little insignificant beings, we couldn't possibly affect the weather. So, number one, if you would tell us just how much of this crap they're putting into the air, and at the same time, the question is, a month or two ago, people on YouTube made claims that the snow didn't melt properly. They claimed if you put a match to it, it would melt like plastic. Can you comment on that as well?
Okay, first let's start with the notion that we can't affect the weather. That is absolutely a notion that is spoken only from a complete lack of knowledge on the system. In fact, very small inputs have exponential outputs in regard to the weather. It can be very easily affected. And that's why weather modification has gone so far, because with early experiments, some in UK, some in US, they discovered right out the gate that the weather is incredibly malleable. In fact, we have an example I use often, Mount Pinatubo in 1992. One eruption that was not so significant made 92 by 50% the lowest rainfall year ever recorded. So now let's discuss what the geoengineers have proposed doing, and we believe they're exceeding these proposals, dumping 20 million tons of aluminum nanoparticulates into the atmosphere every single year. And we have glaring examples after 9/11, when the planes were downed. Very profound weather readings were gathered. I encourage people to watch. We have it posted on Geoengineering Watch. It's called Dimming the Sun. It's a BBC documentary. After 9/11, in those 3 days, astounding temperature changes occurred. Daytime highs went up some 2 degrees across the USA because there was no aircraft spraying. Skies cleared immediately. Nighttime lows dropped a similar amount. These are astounding changes for that amount of time. It shows the degree of effect that these aircraft are having on the atmosphere. Now, the rub is that, yes, they can cool over large regions, but it's temporary, and it comes at the cost of a worsened overall warming. It's cutting one's nose off to spite one's face, and that's what they're doing. So when you spread particulates in the atmosphere, they can literally shut off the rainfall, literally shut it down. The science on this is crystal clear. From source after source, from MIT to scientific, every source known. You put particulates in the atmosphere, you diminish and disperse rain, period. So anybody who thinks we can't affect the weather has simply not done a stitch of study on this. In regard to the snow, let's talk about that, because most people are truly astounded that the geoengineers could turn what should be a rainstorm into a snowstorm. We have the Chinese openly admitting they did this. I challenge anybody to Google this. Chinese scientists create artificial snowstorms. Mainstream media covered it. We have the patents. We have snow that is sublimating. That's what you described, Karen, when snow turns from a solid to a gas without going through the liquid phase, and that's what we would expect with chemically nucleated snow, for which we have the patents and which we know these chemicals are in the snow. We've done enough tests to know this. Conditions are not the same in every place all the time. There's still natural snow, of course, but now you have the Weather Channel and other mainstream media trying to cover the tracks of the geoengineers. Anybody who knows anything about weather or has experienced it or paid any attention to it through the course of their lives, you don't have warm sides and cold sides to winter storms. That's historically unprecedented and impossible. So what you have now, and as the Weather Channel tries to explain away the totally unnatural is somehow natural, you have a warm side and a cold side to this parade of winter storms. One side has tornadoes and thunderstorms and very warm subtropical moisture. The other side, you have an ice transition zone in the middle where this nucleated material comes down and sets up on the ground. And then further into the saturation of the storm, you have chemically nucleated snow. That's exactly what we have going on. We have the patents for it. And again, I posted articles in Geoengineering Watch, Karen, that show lab tests of chemical nucleation. You can see it with your own eyes. A few drops of chemical. There's two separate lab tests. One's chemically nucleated. You can drop the temperatures in the beaker about 100 degrees almost instantly. Same with water, a few drops of biological nucleating material. You can freeze the entire container of water in a second or two, solid. So people that think that this stuff isn't being done simply have preconceptions, but no research. That's it.
All right, I have a couple of other questions. I'll give them to you two at a time. One is, should we stay away from aluminum foil? The other is, what do you say to a scoffer who says that why would they do this? It would affect them and their children. But I'll also just point out that they don't have these huge underground bunkers and cities and seed boxes that are saving humanity for nothing, at least saving a certain group who, maybe the elite. I don't know if you've heard this, Dane, but the elite, the acronym, when I use it, means evil, lying, inbred, traitorous, eugenicists.
It certainly fits. It certainly fits. And in regard to the foil, first, foil means nothing compared to inhaled particulates of aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese. It's virtually any avoiding of aluminum on that scale means nothing, absolutely nothing. Where we're being exposed to lethal contamination is through every breath we take. There's no debate. There's no doubt this is going on. We have, again, the lab test. We know this material is coming down on us. We're absolutely positively breathing it. Shows up in every human test we do, whether it's blood tests, urine test after chelation, hair test. We're all packed with heavy metals. These heavy metals are very toxic by themselves. Aluminum, barium, strontium. Now we have mercury. We're seeing a lot of lead. Now lead is in some of the geoengineering patents, and at this point they don't care what they use. So when you mix these metals together, you have what's called synergistic toxicity. You increase the toxicity exponentially. So we have study in regard to the combination of aluminum and mercury. We all have mercury in us. We all have aluminum in us now. In the case of those two metals combined, toxicity increases as much as 10,000%. So when you start combining these other metals, we don't even know how high it goes. So we are all literally being poisoned day in, day out. So avoiding aluminum foil, again, it means absolutely nothing compared to dealing with what's happening in our skies before our systems are so overburdened that we will never recover. In the case of those who scoff about this, as you said, for the reasons that why would they do this to themselves, how many examples do we already have of the power structure doing things that have contaminated the entire planet? And I start with nuclear power plants and nuclear weapons experiments, over 2,000 of which have been conducted on planet Earth. Every living thing has contamination in it now from these experiments. It didn't stop them. It didn't stop them from taking islands wherever they wanted because there's nobody to stop them. They took over islands, blow whole islands up, experiment in the middle of the Nevada desert, contaminating a whole bunch of people downwind. They don't care. And there is a chelation method that we know of in Germany. I've spoken to a researcher that's actually been treated there. You're on a table for about 2 days. They pull your blood out. It's very expensive, very exclusive, but it's something that could potentially exempt these people from the cumulative effects that the rest of us will endure. This is not the kind of treatment that you or I can get. So they may, in fact, have access to things we don't, and in any case, the excuse that this isn't happening because they wouldn't do this to themselves is absolutely ludicrous and baseless. It's happening, period. No argument. We have film of it happening, materials on the ground. We have a mountain of data to back it up. Anybody who chooses to deny it simply doesn't want to believe it. It's that simple.
Well, you also have photographs of the planes, because I know that there were some people who I spoke to in the past who said, oh, no, those are passenger planes. But some of these planes are specifically set up simply to drop chemicals. And I know that we saw some of the YouTubes on your channel. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes. I mean, when I say we have film footage of it happening, I don't mean from the ground looking up. We have film footage. I should have explained that better. I apologize. We have film footage at altitude, up close, behind, for example, KC-10s, KC-135s, nozzles visible, spraying, turning on and off. We have interior shots of some of these aircraft with various forms of the tanks that are used for this disbursement. We have powder contrail generator patents. We have photographs of the nozzles again. And on the coal contrail issue, and this is still, even with a lot of people in the movement, they're still calling sprayed particulate trails, they're still calling that a condensation trail because it disappears in a few minutes. We shouldn't see anything, almost without exception, for, quote, condensation trails coming from a commercial aircraft or military tankers. Because of high bypass turbofan jet engine, 80% of the air that passes through that engine is non-combusted. The engine, by design, is, for all practical purposes, incapable of generating a condensation trail. You have other types of military aircraft, fighter jets and so forth, very different propulsion systems. They do generate significant condensation trails, but not a high bypass turbofan jet engine. People can look at this animation on our site with a half-hour video explanation.
Okay,
what
Ben,
we are seeing.
We've got to take a commercial break here.
Yes.
We'll pick it up right on the other side. Please stay tuned.
Destroying viruses, bacteria, mold, yeast, and fungus, and keeping the human body healthy and strong. Now, you can give your body and your immune system a mega boost of disease-fighting oxygen with all-natural Oxy-C. With so many people now leading a sedentary indoor lifestyle, most are in a chronic state of oxygen deprivation, which sets up a perfect environment for disease, general fatigue, and a host of other symptoms. Oxy-C is yours in simple, convenient capsules. Nothing to mix, nothing to hassle with. Take it with juice or water anytime. Feel a cold or flu approaching? Have no energy or spark anymore? Try all-natural Oxy-C and prepare to be amazed. Oxy-C is only available from New Earth Health Solutions at Rense.com. Look for the New Earth banner at Rense.com.
Hi everyone, this is Jeff Rense, and I'm here to tell you that there is a drug-resistant superbug perfect storm that is on a collision course with mankind. Infections that were previously treatable are returning with a vengeance. Yes, the rise of the superbugs is here, and we all have to take it very seriously. We're at the end of the age of antibiotic drugs, and drugs are quickly becoming increasingly irrelevant as bacteria and other microorganisms have learned to evolve and to outsmart them. But there is a solution. I've seen it firsthand, and I have used it with impressive success. You must obtain Carnivora. That's CARNIVORA.com. Carnivora was used successfully by the American president in 1985. Call 1-866-VENUS-FLY. That's 1-866-VENUS-FLY. I'm urging you to give Carnivora a try. You must protect yourself and your loved ones now. Call 1-866-VENUS-FLY today.
Scientists in England have succeeded in stabilizing the time-honored substance in garlic that destroys harmful bacteria, viruses, molds, yeast, and fungus. This all-natural microbe killer is called Allicin C, and it's now available to you in 100% vegetarian capsules only on the New Earth page at Rense.com. This powerful broad-spectrum antimicrobial agent is harmless to friendly bacteria and has been concentrated to equal an astonishing 35 cloves of garlic in each vegetarian capsule. Think about it. The antibacterial, antiviral strength of 35 odorless cloves of garlic in just one capsule. Allicin C is so effective it even destroys superbug MRSA in test after test. Allicin C is truly an incredible advance in natural medicine, and with the threats of bacterial and viral diseases and pandemics growing, no home should be without it. Learn more and order Allicin C on the New Earth page at Rense.com.
All right, maybe it is your conscience knocking at your door. I am hoping it is. I'm hoping it's your heart-centered thinking. I'm hoping that as you listen to this, you are realizing that we are more than we have been lied to, and it is totally out of alignment with any kind of higher purpose at all to be sprayed with toxins on a daily basis. It is not something that we should put up with. We outnumber them. If you want to see the pictures of the planes, do go and watch them on geoengineeringwatch.org, because I want to move us ahead. There's so much to talk about tonight. And I'd like you now, please, to to address all these different animal die-offs that I don't think people are aware of, as well as the methane and the ice-free Arctic that is coming upon us.
Yeah, those are all key parts of this equation you bring up, Karen. And first, on the die-off on planet Earth, again, now it's conservative figures of 200-plus species of plant and animal a day. And again, you have people that deny anything's wrong, so they say, well, this is normal. Species have always gone extinct. This is 10,000 times the background rate. That's 1,000,000% of normal. That's not normal. So anyway, we have basically a crash of Earth's ecosystems right now. We're in the 6th great mass extinction right now. This is a statistical fact. Anybody who doesn't believe it needs to look it up. Depending on the study you look at, as many as 9 out of 10 biologists will now admit this on the record. So we have Earth's life support systems failing, and we have very, very game-changing events unfolding by the day. You mentioned the methane, and that's the single greatest linchpin in the coffin right now for all of us. Climate engineering, along with HAARP, the ionosphere heaters that manipulate the jet stream. There's no question the jet stream is being completely manipulated right now. There is no natural weather at this point, period. So as they change upper-level wind patterns, that in turn changes ocean currents. Now we have warm water pumping straight up the eastern seaboard into the Arctic that is helping to thaw methane hydrate on the seafloor. And I'm not, there's a lot of causes for the changes on planet Earth right now. Geoengineering is not, of course, the only one. We have impacted the biosphere in many, many different ways, so I want to stress this. But that being said, the single greatest disrupting factor and greatest assault on life on Earth right now is inarguably climate engineering. So as this warm water is pumped up into the Atlantic, that is helping to, or up into the Arctic Ocean, that is helping to thaw methane hydrate, frozen methane on the seafloor. Methane is expelling right now at a very alarming rate, and there's enough methane in the Arctic alone to end life on Earth many, many times over. There's thought to be as much as 10,000 gigatons of methane in the East Siberian Shelf alone. There's enough. In fact, the last on-the-ground report we had, and I think they're scrubbing any reports from reaching the surface right now, but a Russian research vessel saw plumes of methane from the seafloor a kilometer wide. They were seeing thousands of these plumes, so it's virtually boiling. And the methane's covering the atmosphere like a layer of glass. The geoengineers, of course, are really making a bad situation worse by trying to hide it. And that's what we know the power structure does, right? The example I always use is the Gulf of Mexico, Karen. You remember Corexit down there, right? In the Gulf?
Yes.
You remember the use of Corexit. So they, in using that, made that situation as much as 52 times more toxic, but they did it anyway because hiding it was the goal. And that's what they're doing with climate engineering. So the people in the eastern U.S. right now are in the freeze, but it's a very artificial freeze while the West bakes. It's a shallow freeze. The atmosphere is stratifying. Geoengineering is a huge part of this factor, which means it's not mixing properly and it's staying in layers. And, of course, that helps geoengineers to hide things because they can keep a layer of cold right in the ground and make everybody think that the planet is freezing or cooling. It's not. And, in fact, statistically, this is why it matters. The people continue to do research, and I'll leave it at this. It's imperative that we all have some basis for our opinion and that we don't just form an opinion from some headline or some ideology that we carry with us. Because if we have a completely unsupportable opinion on the overall picture, we lose credibility with those that we need to unite with, like those from the science community that have not shown any spine so far, or those from the corporate media community, which have shown total tyranny. But we need to have a basis for our opinion. And so in regard to the climate, anybody who thinks that it's getting cooler on the planet, you're wrong. The data doesn't support it, and I encourage you to investigate that. And the reason it matters is if we don't have the correct conclusion on what's happening and the fact that geoengineering is making the climate worse and warmer, then we're not in a position to adequately fight for this issue. And that if they come out and try to sell geoengineering as a quote-unquote cure for the warming, if enough people know that geoengineering is making the warming exponentially worse, not better, then people won't buy that lie. And that's why it's important for people to research, have a basis for your opinion, look at facts. And if you look at the articles in geoengineeringwatch.org, I don't say anything without backing it up, without link after link after link after link. Look at the data before you come to a conclusion. That's the best advice I can give to people.
That's really interesting because I have been looking. It's so hard to know who or what to believe, but there are also people who will say that we're going into global cooling. And I know that up here in Oregon, it does seem like it's cooling. Plus, I know that we had a drought there for a while. We're still classified as being in a drought because apparently we didn't get enough snowpack to really be able to melt and help us here further on in the summer when we're going to need the water for the crops. And I'll tell you, in Oregon, just about everybody I know gardens, or if they don't garden, they go to a farmer's market. And we're very much about raising and growing our own foods. I know from listening to you, you spoke about the fact that you can no longer garden.
No, we can't here. In fact, for anybody who thinks they're growing organic, there is no organic anymore. The climate engineering particulates alone have infiltrated every life form. We have good conclusive data from Norwegian and German researchers. They're seeing horizontal gene mutation in all plant life. We're seeing mutations in the forest. These are bioavailable particulates. They're being absorbed in everything. There's still a drought on the West Coast. And again, as far as the overall state of the climate, wherever you live and however cool it might seem where you're at, you must look past your own horizon because the statistics are completely contrary. It's not like this is a little one-sided. We have just passed the 38th consecutive year on planet Earth with above normal temperatures, 346 months in a row of above normal temperatures. 9 of the last 10 years were above were the warmest years ever recorded, 9 out of 10. These are hard facts. I encourage people to look at this, and it's not about Al Gore. I am not an Al Gore fan. I say that again and again and again. Gore's hypocrisy boggles the mind. But what's important for people to understand in order to fight geoengineering effectively is that climate engineering is making a bad situation much worse. It's taking us from the frying pan and putting us in the fire. And it's important people understand this. If the planet was allowed to respond to the elevated carbon that we've put in the atmosphere, which is a problem, but if the planet was allowed to respond, it would rain more, Karen, not less. The laws of physics make this clear. For every degree of warming, you have 7% more moisture carried in the atmosphere. In fact, by all available modeling, minus geoengineering as a factor, then the West Coast should be getting deluged. The West Coast, when carbon counts were 25% higher in the Pliocene epoch, 5.2 million years ago, the West Coast was lush because there was so much rain. The hydrological cycle increases. The planet responds. It can't respond right now. So geoengineering over 60 years has put us in an exponentially worse position, poisoned all of us, and now truly we are in a fight for life. I mean, if we look at the mapping out of the current trajectory, Karen, if we stay on this trajectory, we have no chance. And I mean on a very near-term basis, not long-term. So it's imperative people understand the gravity of our situation. It's imperative they abandon their preconceptions. It's imperative they look at data so that they really, really understand what's going on. Look past headlines, and even a lot of independent, quote, independent news sites have not reported correct data. I've seen independent news sites, big ones that everybody's heard of, and I won't name them by name, but they reported that carbon is good for the ocean. I challenge anybody to find any science to back that one up. Carbon is acidifying the ocean, and methane is acidifying the ocean right now as it comes to the surface. We have for example, the seafood harvest of scallops and so forth. They've just lost 95% of their harvest because of the acidification. So I'm just saying people have to investigate. They have to look below the surface and not take a headline, even if it's from a quote-unquote independent news source. Look for yourself.
That's right. Okay, we've got our final break coming up, and before I just want to plant this seed. When we come back, we'll find out how long before the planet is uninhabitable for 7 billion people. Be right back after this. If you want to call in with questions, 877-342-6673.
When you think of getting old, what comes to your mind? Spending the last years of your life in a nursing home? Staring out a window? Medicated to keep you docile? Not able to recognize your own kids? Suffering with some dreaded disease until you die all alone? Well, think again. One of the premier doctors in the world, Dr. James Forsythe, wrote the book, Anti-Aging Cures. Life-changing secrets to reverse the effects of aging. Your key to the real fountain of youth. And Suzanne Summers, the perpetual face of eternal youth, wrote the foreword. As mentioned in the book, Royal Velvet is the most cost-effective, easiest, and complete way to reverse the effects of aging. It's true. So, do you want glowing skin, less wrinkles, thicker hair, less gray hair, your hormones balanced, improved memory, a toned physique, greater energy, less pain and stiffness, as well as benefits too numerous to name? Go to RoyalVelvetNow.com. Click on the rinse icon in the upper right-hand corner, and within a couple of days, you can be on the path to youthful living. RoyalVelvetNow.com. Your life will never be the same.
Charlie McGrath of WideAwakeNews.com here with a question from my friends at Austin Rare Coins and Bullion. What do they know that we don't? Insiders and a who's who list of elite have made it crystal clear that we are headed for catastrophe, putting out warning after warning, urging people to batten down the hatches. Billionaire George Soros has recently been dumping stocks and at the same time acquiring millions in gold. In fact, in a recent interview, he was quoted as saying, "I'm not here to cheer you up. The situation is as serious and difficult as I've experienced in my career." Out of control government deficit spending and a Federal Reserve that's only solution seems to be print more fiat currency will lead to a weaker dollar and massive inflation on necessity items such as energy and food. If you have wealth to protect, please visit my friends at Austin Rare Coins and Bullion. Gabe Elton and the folks at Austin Rare Coins and Bullion have many Wide Awake News customers because they're honest, they're fair, and they won't sell you paper promises or product they do not have. Call Gabe Elton at 800-552-4109. That number again, 800-552-4109, or visit them online at austincoins.com.
Make a promise, take a vow, trust your feelings, it's easy now. Understand the voice within and feel a change already beginning. Whoa.
All right, that voice within is trying to tell us to pay attention to our world and to not ignore it. Many of us are sick because we are ignoring the signs all around us. We refuse to see the truth of our own eyes. We take pharmaceuticals. We try to ignore it. We eat a lot of the junk food. We pretend it will be all right if we keep our heads down, and we're taught by the unholy marriage of state and religion to believe in the divine right of kings, to be humble, to keep our heads down and stay out of the way and hope for the best and a reward after we die, when this is where we have a chance to create heaven or continue to create hell. We've got to wake up. We've got to understand that the uniforms are all about following orders that come down from the bankers. The military are lied to most of all. I just quickly want to say again to you that there's another comment saying, well, this has been the coldest winter ever, and I know that it's been really cold here, and your guest is losing all credibility with me by telling me that we're going into global warming. So if you just briefly want to touch on that again, as well as in your opinion, when you think that the damage will be so severe that the planet will not be able to sustain 7 billion people.
First, the reason that your guest thinks that is because they're not looking past their immediate surroundings. And this is part of what the climate engineers are trying to do right now. And if people would understand, one, that these cold events are not natural, they're completely engineered, and two, if you look at the overall global maps, you can see exactly where they're focusing climate engineering, exactly where it's colder than normal. And I challenge anybody who makes that statement that I'm losing credibility, I challenge them to back up, look at a global scenario, that you have to look past your own boundary. When they can do things like, for example, Karen, did you see the 100,000 cattle that died in South Dakota last October?
I saw it on your website. I saw it in one of your videos.
I just want to use that for an example. As an example for anybody who can look, and they can look this up online, you had 100,000 cattle die from a snowstorm on October 4th in South Dakota while it was 85 degrees and raining in Chicago. Now, how do 100,000 cattle that are used to snow, if you talk to people who have owned cattle, the cattle know how to deal with cold, but 45 is not so cold, or 40 degrees, but they were encased in endothermic reacting chemical nucleated snow. It's not natural, but it can and does cool things down temporarily. That's exactly what you have happening all along the eastern half of the U.S., and I posted maps, again, if people look at Geoengineering Watch, maps for month after month after month, western half of the U.S. frying, eastern half freezing. So people have to look past their own immediate surroundings to have a clear picture of what's going on. Otherwise, we're living on a flat Earth. That's what it comes down to. For people who don't look past their own horizon, that's a flat earther right now. So all I can tell that person is to please look at overall statistics. They are shocking if anybody chooses to look, and everything I just cited is true. And maybe that person might want to think back to 2012 when the U.S. had its warmest year ever recorded. We broke records by 30-plus degrees, 362 all-time record highs, 0 record lows. What changed from 2012 to 2013? Geoengineering was completely unleashed on the eastern U.S. So I challenge that person to examine that. How much time do we have? Not much. People are trained to think that our equation is linear, that we can look backward at a graph and somehow project that going forward as if the graph has a life of its own. This is simply conditioning. It's not true. It's not real. So right now, based on the changes that are occurring, and some of the best researchers on the planet, one of whom I know, Guy McPherson, he's a professor emeritus, UC Arizona. If we graph out what we see on the current trajectory, I stress that point, if we stay on this path, we're looking at a northern hemisphere that might not support life at all and is in perhaps less than 2 decades. Now, I don't care how hard that is to swallow for people. Those that aren't swallowing it aren't looking at the data. This is an exponentially fast change that we're going through, and the fact that Walmart's still open and they can go shopping and grab a burger at McDonald's, that's not a long-term reality. We have oceans that are dying by the day. We have global pelagic fish populations down 95%. We have harvests crashing around the globe. The changes are occurring at an astounding rate. We have a UV level that's so intense, it's literally burning the bark off of trees. All the geoengineers are trying to do right now, Karen, and your listeners should hear this. They are trying desperately, and it's working. Your caller that just called in is a shining example of how well their strategy is working. They're cooling down the same places again and again and again and again, week after week after week. While we're 20 degrees above normal in the West, day in, day out, constantly, other people are below normal, and so they've caused a lot of confusion and a lot of division. So the geoengineers' tack right now is to hide the gravity of the problem, cool the same areas, the most populated areas of the U.S., where they can affect the most people's psychology, cool those areas again and again, nucleated snow, artificial cooling, artificial storms, but while they're doing this and creating this confusion, they're digging in. That's why they've ordered the 4.2 or 2.4 billion rounds of 40 caliber hollow point. We know they're digging bunkers underground. We know they're stocking up with freeze-dried food. We talked to some of the Mountain House people that said that the government was taking all they could produce. They're digging in as fast as they can. So all they're doing is hiding the situation as long as they can. Clearly, it's working on some people, but I would argue that in the coming months, the gravity of our climate situation will become crystal clear to all that are even slightly awake.
Now, speaking of someone who is slightly awake, we've got a caller on the line. This is Cindy Pakoulas, and I believe you may have met her before. She's going to be on this Friday, and she is also very, very much aware and awake of this geoengineering, and she'll be picking this ball up once a month for us. Cindy, what comments would you like to put in, and thanks for calling.
Hi, Dane. Hi, Karen. How are you guys doing?
Hello, Cindy. How are you?
Pretty good. Surviving. I was interested in what you said about the snow, because as you know, we've gotten a ton of snow this year, last year, snow like I haven't seen probably since I was a kid. But the interesting thing is that last week, and we've talked about this, Dane, you and I before, last week, I guess it got up to about 63 one day, and then, of course, the next day we dumped down to, I don't know, like 19 or 20. But the snow still hasn't melted. And I know it was all over the Internet about burning the snow, and I actually did that myself because I wanted to check it out. And the same exact thing happened. I mean, it didn't burn. If anything, it kind of curled up a little bit, which kind of goes with what you're saying about, the snow being different. And even now, like we've had a couple of warmer days, and we still have snow cover. And now it's really cold again today, but we've had warmer days in between, and the snow just refuses to melt.
On that note, Cindy and Karen, did you guys see the 75-pound ice boulders in Lake Michigan? Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that. No.
Okay, both you guys should look that up. Now, in the last 3 years, Michigan has mysteriously had huge amounts of these massive ice boulders in the lake. It's never been seen before a few years ago. I talked to a resident that's in their 70s, grew up there, never seen anything like this before a few years ago. That's another telltale sign of artificially nucleated material. Causes a nucleus, and the material freezes around this nucleus and gets bigger and bigger. How can people not see these glaring signs that there is radical things being done to our climate? How do you suddenly have 75-pound ice boulders filling up Lake Michigan? And now, of course, the lakes are frozen over, but this is also largely a result of the chemically nucleated material. In Northern California, on our ponds here, we had ice
on our ponds. It's interesting you say that, because I know that Niagara Falls has frozen twice this year already, and the last time it did that, and it's a rare occurrence, it's not like it happens a lot, was something like 25 years ago, and this year alone it's frozen twice.
Now, if people look at the lab demonstrations I put in the last article, one of the last articles I did, they can visibly see a whole container of water that freezes virtually instantly with a couple drops of biologically nucleated material. They have patents for this, so we know they're using it. And we have these ice boulders in Lake Michigan never seen before. And the pond ice I was mentioning in Northern California, we had ice on our ponds here with pond water of 40 degrees, nighttime lows in the low 40s, daytime highs in the 60s. How could we have ice for 3 weeks solid? And we've tested the material. It has the same nucleating materials that we know are in these patents. So, again, people need to look at what's happening and understand that these cool downs are not natural. And if they look at the maps that I posted in one of the articles on the top stories on Geoengineering Watch, look at those maps and you'll see something that is meteorologically impossible without engineering. We're seeing Amarillo, Texas last year, an example I use often, 100 degrees on the ground on May 1st, snowed May 2nd. Now, people should know that can't happen naturally. It can't. The cool down is being completely engineered from top to bottom.
I definitely believe that. And we only have a few minutes left. And the thing is, too, after watching why in the world are they spraying, what in the world are they spraying, who in the world is spraying, it is so obvious that these misrepresentatives run and scurry like rats when you want to confront them. I've seen you in video, Cindy, trying to talk to these cretins who just ignore you, or they knit, or they play solitaire. And so it's
actually, what they did also, Karen, they put on a face mask, the legislators.
Wow. So this is why I keep coming back to the idea of a strike. And I mean a full-on strike, where people just put their foot down on the 15th or another day. I don't care what day it is, but when we can put our foot down together and say, no more, I refuse to work until an immediate cessation of geoengineering and peace is declared. Because also, as they're trying to railroad us, they conveniently forget about the daily destruction of the military-industrial complex. Probably only have about 1 more minute here, so Dane, if you'd like to make a final comment. Cindy, we'll hear from you on Friday. Thank you so much for calling in. Please tune in, everyone.
Oh, you're welcome. Good to talk to you, Dane. Bye, Karen.
Good.
Bye. All right.
You know, people, again, to reiterate that no weather at this point is natural, and we have global dimming. And I encourage people to watch the documentary that's on the front of geoengineeringwatch.org, Dimming the Sun. 22 to 25% of the sun's direct rays no longer reach the surface of the planet. That's the design and the goal of geoengineering. So people need to understand the weather they're experiencing, especially in the cold zones, is not natural. We need everybody to engage in this fight, Karen. Arm yourself with credible data. Have an idea what you're talking about. Look at the overall picture. Don't move forward on preconceptions or ideology, because then we're no different from those people who don't want to believe the spraying. If we don't look at ongoing data and we don't readjust our perspectives and our conclusions, then we're no different than those who choose to deny the spraying. So it's up to all of us to learn what's really going on, look at the data, and arm yourself with credible information like our information flyers, which we've mailed out about 70,000 so far. That's a very effective tool to introduce the subject to somebody, to plead with them to investigate and to help us expose this issue. So arm yourself with credible data, know what you're talking about, help us to start spot fires of awareness so we can reach critical mass as soon as possible. We need to reach critical mass of awareness.
We do, and what do you think of a strike, of finally to me, see, Dane, nothing is more important than moral stewardship, saving ourselves and our planet. And we are so much more than pieces of colored paper or metal. Our true job should be the joy of being creative and doing what we can to help and restore Mother Earth.
I agree. Thank you for your help, Karen.
All right. Thank you for joining me. That's Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org. Tomorrow you will have the wonderful Charlie McGrath. After that, Eric Lovely. And again, if you're interested in this topic, Cindy Pikulis will be picking up the third Fridays of the month with information on this as well as connecting the dots. Thanks very much. This is Karen. I'll see you next month.
Bombs on the buses, bikes, roads, inside your market, your shops, your clothes. My dad, he's got a lot of fear, I know, but enough pride inside, nothing let that show. My brother had a book he would hold with pride, a little red cover with a broken spine on the back. He hand wrote a quote inside, when the rich wage war, it's the poor who die. Meanwhile, the leader just talks away, stuttering and mumbling for nightly news to play. The rest of the world watching at the end of the day, both scared and angry, like what did he say?
You have been chosen, yes, you, to discover for yourself what thousands have already experienced, the most life-changing health product in the world. It's called Royal Velvet, and there's nothing else like it. Royal Velvet users testify to receiving hundreds of benefits, from reversing the effects of aging to mental clarity, as well as noticeably improved sleep, energy, libido, overall health, and so much more, including saving lots of money. This is the real deal, that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that you will regret if you don't act upon it. Honestly, there is an extremely limited amount of raw material, making it available only to a select few, a very select few. So find out why you have been chosen. Go to RoyalVelvetNow.com, click on the rinse icon in the upper right-hand corner for an incredible surprise. Oh yeah, if you place your order before we run out of them, you will receive the eye-popping but simple-to-read book that tells you how to live in divine health, and it's free. RoyalVelvetNow.com.
In 2007, one man, Mike Dillard, made 5 predictions which forecasted the 2008 economic crisis and the pending Eurozone collapse. 3 brand new, shocking, must-watch videos with predictions for the coming year. www.the3videos.com. Over the past year, Mike Dillard has helped thousands of ordinary people create and recover wealth by tapping into the black box investing strategies the big banks don't want you to know about. www.the3videos.com. As the European banking system implodes and governments collapse at breakneck speeds, the next 12 months will be the most anticipated and important months in modern human history. This will make 2008 look like a walk in the park. Everyone will be affected. Go to www.the3videos.com now. Learn how to prepare your family and prosper during the global financial collapse.
You're listening to the Rense Radio Network, nationwide and worldwide on the net and at rense.com.